Welcome to the Drivable Podcast, where we discuss all things about driving and safer community transport for people with disabilities and medical conditions. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe to our channel and follow us on our social. Just look up Drive-Able Podcast. We have a lot of content and interviews now. We've got heaps of stuff. Go back and listen to our old stuff. We get a lot of great feedback on the interviews with basically the end users and the clients, and even the technical stuff from the OT. So get out there. There's gold in all of it. Look it up. We're on all your typical channels: Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, all of that. So get on there and just search on Google. You'll find us. Brad.
Yeah. And if you want to follow some of the show notes, make sure you go to the Facebook page because that's where we're going to save all of those little bits and pieces. So check us out on the Facebook page, Drive-Able Podcast, if you want to see photos, if you want to see links and those type of things, because that's the best place to share it. But you said there's gold. This one here is going to be excellent. This time we're talking to Alex. Alex is utilizing his car for a unique employment opportunity as a result of his injuries. He's got a spinal cord injury and he's got vehicle modification, and he is using his modified vehicle for employment, and we're going to unpack that with him. And I just can't wait to get this interview underway. I'm really excited. What about you, Ali?
Yeah, really excited because he's also got some really cool products in his car as well. So really excited to unpack all that as well.
Yeah, let's get him on board.
Let's do it.
Driving is something many take for granted, but when someone has altered ability, then driving or getting out and about in your own car can be challenging. Driving with a disability doesn't mean you have to drive an old clapped out car with farm-like machinery, and relying on a wheelchair doesn't mean waiting for hours and then being in the back of a maxi access cab getting car sick. The Drivable Podcast is designed to introduce and explore driving aids for people with disabilities, vehicle modifications, the NDIS, research, medical guidelines, driving techniques, and much, much more. The Drivable Podcast is to help you be informed and be in control of your own independence so you can experience freedom through driving safely and reliably. I'm Ali, and with me is Brad, and together we have over 30 years of experience in disability and driving. Enough of the intros, let's get into it.
All right, let's kick this off. We've got Alex with us. Thanks very much for joining us, Alex. Alex, the first question that we ask people when they come onto the podcast is to introduce themselves and let us know a little bit about your disability.
Yeah, so my name's Alex. I have a C6, C7 spinal cord injury. I acquired that in 2019 in January, diving into a river. All the swimming lessons come to you very quickly then, and so from there straight to Royal Adelaide Hospital, flown in, time in Hampstead rehab as well. No feeling for anything, but it's a complete injury, so no feeling beneath anything beneath my sort of chest level.
Yeah. So for people that want to know, C6 is up in your neck, C6, C7 is up in your neck.
Yeah, so the sixth vertebrae down from where it connects to your skull.
And how does that impact your arms and legs?
Legs, included in the nothing beneath the chest level.
Mm-hmm.
My arms were sort of fine the whole way through. I'm sort of lucky with that. I just have I've got some movement in my hands, but there is I struggle with strength in my fingers and that sort of thing. So
coordination is a bit of a tricky thing as well.
I do have. So it's very little fine motor stuff with my fingers. I can sort of grab some things, I can pick the phone up and that sort of stuff, but carrying heavy things, I can't pick anything up. So
yeah, and you've got good elbow and shoulder control.
Yeah, that was it never really seemed to be a problem. All the way down to my wrists and spine. Even my wrists have good flex in those, the strength enough in that. So literally just my hands caught the front of the last bit there. Otherwise, my arms are fine. There is a bit of sensation feeling that I can't feel on the underside of my arms, but the motor's all still there.
Yeah, right.
How did it actually happen? Did you sort of dive head first or something? Or
Yeah, just head first. Woke up at so we're on a camping trip. Woke up at about 7:30 in the morning and decided I'm going to go for a swim. And, first one in the water. I was the first one to hit was under it. So, yeah.
Was anybody else up?
Yeah, there was a few people up already.
Okay. So
it
must have been.
It was January. It was the middle of summer. It was hot anyway. Everyone was sort of keen to get out of their tents. So, yeah, no, there's plenty of people up and around.
So did you become unconscious?
No, I was conscious the whole way through.
Wow. And what was so you recall the whole thing?
I can recall the whole thing, everything that happened. So I was laying on my back. It was shallow water, so there was no trouble at drowning at all.
It's actually interesting. I mean, because the most people that we've spoken to here tend not to recall the sort of the main part of the injury when it happens and so on. So the fact that you've, I guess, got those pictures or experiences in your mind, is it something that makes it, do you think, easier or harder to deal with?
I don't think it's pretty easy. I know exactly what happened, how it happened. I remember my last few steps up to the water and diving in, and then just sort of laying on my back, looking up, going, well, this didn't feel right. And just sort of stayed still. And friends came along and asked if I was all right, and we went from there.
Yeah. Did you have pain?
No pain either. I haven't had any pain from the injury till now.
Right.
Even like sort of, they say you get the nerve pain, phantom pain, all that stuff. Very lucky that I don't get any of that. Sometimes I feel like my legs are sort of in a weird position, but I wouldn't really call it pain. I might have a high tolerance compared to some people, but it's just, I might feel like my heel's like sitting on top of my ankle or like the other foot, but they're not. So that'd be it. But I mean, I sort of just roll around, reset my brain coordinated where it all thinks it is, and it all goes away anyway.
Let's talk about your rehab then. So you were at Hampstead and Hampstead is the rehab hospital here in Adelaide.
Yep.
How long were you in hospital for?
So I was in Royal Adelaide for about 2 months. I think I got out on the 54th day-ish. Not that I was counting. And then Hampstead, I was there for about 4.5 months.
Yep. And you're learning to get your strength back and wheelchair mobility and those type of things?
Yeah, strength back was the weird one. Obviously, you got the segregation from being in a bed for 2 months. That's real. That happened very sort of quickly. I was struggling to sort of lift some things, and then very quickly they get you back into the gym at Hampstead, try and get you some arm strength back, and then so I started off in a electric chair to move around, so I could get sort of places, and then I was sort of very keen to get into a push chair to sort of get out of there as quickly as I could. I feel like sitting around there. I wanted to get out as fast as possible, so push for the manual chair, and then they teach you how to transfer in and out of bed and out of the chair.
We've spoken to a lot of people now. We've had lots of interviews, and North Ryde, is it Ali in Sydney? Is that the one where Royal Rehab? They talk about the driving clinic as part of the New South Wales hospital there. There's a driving clinic at Hampstead. Did that come up at all? Like, is that where you did your driving?
No, that's not where I did mine. It sort of came up towards the tail end. I think if I was there longer, I probably would have maybe completed it there. But I was sort of keen to get out of Hampstead altogether. So the last sort of month, I did some stuff. I spoke to some of the people there about it, some of the OTs that were there. Left and didn't return back to that facility for it.
Were you a driver beforehand?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So when you were, I guess, in that rehab phase, where were you thinking about driving? Like, what was your thought process around driving? Did you know it was a possibility?
It's the first thing that I got a letter I received while I was in hospital about anything to do with my what had happened was a letter from the Department of Transport, or the driving people that give out your license, them saying your license has now been medically terminated. You know, you no longer have a license. So,
oh man, that's
as the first
wow.
thing, as the first thing you hear from them, just yeah, you don't have that anymore. It's like, oh, cool, thanks. But yeah, I was keen to get it back, especially. I don't think it dawned on me how much I wanted it back until I was back at home though, and just sitting around all day. Parents gone to work, girlfriend gone to work, and it's just, what do I do now? And I'm still sort of not confident in my wheelchair skills to sort of go out on large adventures during the day, just pushing around by myself. So where I live is I live near the beach, so that's sort of very accessible for me to be able to go down to, but confidence I didn't have to push all the way there. It's probably just over a kilometre, so to get to the beachfront there.
Yeah, there's a few sand dunes and undulations to get down to beaches and stuff. If you're not confident, you might get stuck down there and not get home.
And that's the thing, getting stuck down there is the problem I would have. Getting down there, no worries, it's all downhill, but getting back up, using the steep bits.
Do you need to use this special thing for your wheelchair, or do they have ramps or anything like all those maps down there?
It's Semaphore Beach. They used to have a wheelchair access, matting all the way from one point all the way down to the beach. At some point before my injury, someone came along and took a big chunk out of the middle of it for some reason, and they've never replaced it or put it back out again. So
yeah, it's disappointing, because that's, I think, the only beach in South Australia that has one. Is that correct? I
don't know if it's the only one. Maybe it's the only one I've seen that was ever there. Beach access. If I ever wanted to actually get down to the sand these days, a few of the surf lifesaving clubs have got beach chairs that you can. I've never really inquired much, but I know they have. I've seen them post on it. I think you can just go down there and ask the lifesavers if you can borrow it, or maybe you pay for it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're the ones with the big round floaty wheels. Yeah. To actually get in water. Yeah.
But you need someone to push you with those, I think, don't you?
Yeah. No, there's no self-propelling on those ones. So
yeah.
So mate, you were stuck at home when your girlfriend went off to work and so forth. So driving became more of a need or a want for you at that stage. Talk us through the next steps. What did you have to do there? Because you couldn't go back to Hampstead to do your assessment at that point once you've been discharged, I think, is the ruling there.
Yeah. So once you're no longer a patient, you're no longer covered with their sort of stuff, and they focus on everyone that they have there, not anyone else that sort of wants to come by. So it's very much a sort of government run for public health, not anything else. So after that, started doing my own research, Googling what I needed to do, and went from there. Rang a few people and went off and saw an OT.
And did you do that privately, or were you involved with NDIS at that point? How did it all come together from a funding point of view?
So funding point of view, when I did my NDIS plan, part of a lot of the stuff at Hampstead is they help you a lot with your first plan at Hampstead. But not knowing the scope of what was sort of required for, especially car modification or anything like that, I think they sort of had in a baseline for OT work for assessments for my car stuff, but not anything for any modifications or anything like that. So it's purely just OT assessments for this was then put into my NDIS plan. So
we might talk about that, because that's important for people to understand. So you had OT money as part, this is really common, by the way, people. You had OT money in your capacity building part of your NDIS plan, but no modification side of it all. So you went and saw the OT, and they did assessed for modifications to get you back to driving and so forth. We'll talk about that in a little bit in regards to the process that you went through for that. But after they've done their assessment, what happened in regards to funding for modifications? Did you have to wait? Was it automatic? Did it come quickly? What happened next?
So next it was put in for a plan review. I think it came back maybe as we didn't really do much more until I had my license on the way of coming back. So we put in for a review, and then we sort of started going. I think a lot of stuff was maybe conditional of me actually having my license, so they weren't modifying a car for no reason.
Yeah, they want to make sure that you had that license first before they issued funds to be able to put the mods in.
Yeah. Just so that they can, assume that I wouldn't use it.
So will NDIS, I mean, I'm not sure if you know, or maybe Brad, you might know, having sort of that experience in the driving world. So NDIS, will they fund you to get your license?
I think they did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they covered all that. So,
but they require you to. So just to confirm, they require you to get your license first before they will then put modifications. So basically, I guess it's interesting. To be honest, actually, I'm learning this new. I didn't realize it worked in this process. So effectively, you kind of have to get funding for the license process first. Is that right?
I think the funding was all sort of there, sort of ready to be given out. But they weren't going to give it out until the license had gotten.
Yeah. Okay. No worries.
So the amount for opening for modifications, I mean, NDIS knew all that. They knew what we wanted, how much.
Yeah. Okay.
It was just they sort of said, make sure that they're actually going to be able to use this before we modify.
One of the common things that I hear, and I'm interested to see, I guess, if Brad resonates with this, is a car and transport mods seem to be kind of like the forgotten end thing. And then they often are missed in a lot of the initial plan reviews or in the initial plans, because people are really busy in this chaotic state, kind of thinking, I need to get my home set up. I need to get, all of the kind of major everyday stuff. And then, as he said, then they go home and then they get used to all that stuff. And then they start going, I need to go somewhere. And then, no, sorry, mate, you're not, can't talk to us for another 12 months, maybe, so
that'll be your next plan.
Yeah. And I've got a big video on this, on actually my YouTube channel, where I really encourage OTs. And I guess if you're an OT or even an end user, make sure you sort of consider that. And my feedback, I guess, has been that it's kind of just forgotten, because they're so busy with other stuff. And then they go, oh yeah, we didn't even think about that, and so it's just a reminder to think about it, so you don't have to end up in that situation.
Well, it's a lot of the very first plan of NDIS is here's all the stuff you need to survive.
Yeah.
And then the next couple of months he's going, oh well, here's all the stuff you actually need extra to live, like to be happy with what you're sort of doing as well. So.
And then your next plan maybe not be for 12 months. So those asking for reviews partway along your yearly plan, they can be really important. Just to touch back on a couple of things that you spoke about, Ali and Alex, it's not always the case. You don't always have to get your license first. It actually, unfortunately, sometimes comes down to the person reading the NDIS applications. And what provisos they put on it. We've installed modifications while people are going through the licensing process as well. It also comes down to how the OT writes about the ability for somebody to pass a practical test in the end. But more often than not, most people need to be able to prove that they've got the skills to be able to drive before NDIS will hit the go button on approving modifications, more often than not, which means that the person is then delayed. They've got their license and then they're waiting and waiting and waiting for that car to become available. Is that what happened to you, Alex?
Not really. I got stuck with COVID. So when we were doing sort of my driving lessons and assessments, was sort of when COVID first sort of struck. So I was no longer allowed to do any driving lessons or assessments because social distancing, I wasn't allowed in the car with any instructors. So that got pushed back by a few months. And then, that was my biggest delay. I think it sort of lined up. I sort of got my license. I think I got my license, and it wasn't very long after my car modification. done, or at least it had all been, it was ready because we had that large span of time of not being able to do much else anyway. So it was sort of, you know, planned beforehand. So they lined up okay.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe COVID was to your advantage and you could just blame something else because, yeah, quite often people have to, you know, wait for the funds to actually be released and then wait for a time to actually get it into the modifier and so forth like that.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back and actually talk about the modifications that you've got in your car. So how do you actually drive?
Yeah, so I use a Caro Speed accelerator brake indicator module, which sits to the left of my left knee. I use a tri-spinner on the steering wheel, and then just a sort of fold-away slide table inside the door to get myself into the car, and then an R11 Robot arm in the boot to grab my wheelchair and take it all the way to the boot for me.
There is a whole lot of technical stuff there we could unpack, Ali. What do you reckon? Should we go through some of those in a little bit more detail?
Yeah. And actually, maybe what we, just for the listeners, what we could do is even put some links up to some of the websites of those companies for those products, because it's what you've got in your vehicle for people out there, I guess. It's effectively a new age self-drive. It's an alternate to a self-drive. You know, it's kind of like an out-of-the-box self-drive. So you've got to have a bunch of different things to make it happen. But you're effectively able to have a wheelchair and drive, but not from wheelchair. But it's kind of like a pseudo version of that. So and we're able to get that kind of in your car. So yeah, let's talk about the products, and it'll come about as we talk about it.
Let's start at the front. So the Caro Speed.
Yep.
The Caro Speed is a left-sided hand control. The good old days of just having hand controls on the right-hand side, that's gone now. We've spoken about left-sided hand controls a bit in this podcast, that it's better for working against the camber of the road. So it's a push-pull type of mechanism. You push forward for braking and pull to accelerate.
Correct.
Yeah, and this one's mounted from the floor. So it's not mounted from the steering column. It's actually mounted from basically the base of where your seat connects to the car. And it's a lever action that way rather than a lever action from your steering column for our listeners. So, but then you mentioned something interesting. So how do you put your indicators on?
So there's a switching mechanism on that, and a button. There's a few buttons on there. So there's a button on the left side. You can lock your brake in. So you push it forward on your brake. You push a button on the side and locks your brake there. You can let go, sort of give your arm a brake at traffic lights or wherever.
Also for selecting your gears, park to drive, and those type of things.
So all that. But then there's another switch on top, and that's got my indicators and high beams on it, which I can control with my thumb. So, and then there's also a button on there for the horn as well. But indicators be the main one that you're hitting on that.
And because your you've got some good thumb movements in that left hand, from what you were showing us earlier, that works out all right?
Yeah, works out. Yeah, great for me. So
awesome.
Not throwing my arm around trying to hit indicators somewhere else, or the other option would have been the.
And did you try any other styles of hand controls, and this was kind of the most suitable, you thought?
Yeah, this is the most suitable one. There was another gear stick sort of type setup that I tried using, but the Caro Speed just sort of felt better. I tried the head indicating cushions for the back headrest, but again, I had the thumb movement. I may as well have used that. So I really liked the Caro Speed the first time I used it, and just stuck with it.
And your triceps must be fairly strong for that. Yeah, your triceps and shoulder blades must be fairly strong from your injury.
Yeah, so a lot of the C6s have a lot of tricep arm problems as well. Where I was very lucky to come away with sort of what I would think of full functioning, but I can't really compare myself much against the old self, because yeah, that's hard to do.
So for steering, you were saying that you're using a tri-spin. So for people listening, that's a spinner knob, but with 3 prongs on it, and your wrist and palm of your hand fits into that, so you don't have to grip as much. Is that why you're using it?
Yeah, so my left hand, which I use on the carry speed, has a much stronger grip than my right hand. I usually was right hand dominant, but it's slowly swapping now. So the tri-spin, just sort of helps lock my hand in place so that it can't go anywhere, and
Doesn't slip off halfway through a corner.
Yeah, exactly. So
right.
It locks it very well and just holds it.
Good. Oh, so that's how you're driving. And how many lessons did it take you to be confident with it, do you reckon? Or are you still learning?
No, definitely not still learning. I mean, I used to drive a lot for my work beforehand. I used to drive Ford Transits with trailers. I wasn't worried about road rules driving at all. I was a very confident driver. So once there was a setup I liked and sort of could work with, I think I only did 4 or 5 actual lessons. 2 of them were figuring out what sort of setup I liked the best, and then we had just a couple more, and then we left it at that.
Yeah, okay.
That's
pretty cool.
So then you've got how do you get in and out of the car? You've got, you said a fold down platformy thing. So it's actually connected to the car. And there's like a slide board.
Yeah, just a slide board that folds away. So if you open my front car door, you generally won't see anything. The board folds out from the back of the car, folds down, so it hides away when you don't want it there. And then you jump on that, slide across, and then put it back when you're finished.
So
that's a tip-up plate, yeah.
Yeah. So
just because my car does have a sort of a large gap between the chair and the edge of the car.
Yeah. Very good. And then you've mentioned something called an R11 Robot. So that's what loads your wheelchair into the boot of the car. What kind of car have you got?
It's a wagon, Ford Mondeo.
Ford Mondeo wagon. Yep. And you've got this thing called an R11 Robot. Some people might be familiar with an Abbey loader, which is a similar type of product, but this one's an R11 Robot, which is a bootloader, which loads your wheelchair around the side of the car from the driver's door all the way around to the boot. Is that?
That is correct. Yeah. So, the car already came with an automatic boot opening function, but I don't think that'd be a problem with most cars. You can probably get that installed. Push the button, click the switch, and the wheelchair just magically starts coming out of the car or starts going back into it. So,
they're. We'll put a link to some of these products, as we said. I really want people to look at the robot purely because I'm a mechanical engineer and an engineering nerd, and I think that is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. I encourage people to go watch videos on it. I've seen it actually posted on some social media sites like I think Lad Bible or some of these pages that sort of share things for likes, and they shared a video of one of those from Europe, and it had like millions of likes, and everyone was just like, "Oh my god, I've never seen anything like this!" And it just literally looks like this thing from the future. So I think it's such a cool looking device. So I encourage people to look at it because every time we show it, and I guess I'm interested to know, have you had much approaches in public when you use it and people go, "What's that?" Because every time I've shown it, people are just speechless.
I definitely get a few people that sort of stop and stare and look at you in the car, go, "That's really cool." It is great. I've had someone else in a wheelchair come up to me and go, "What is that? Want one?" So you definitely do get plenty of looks of people coming over, having a look, having a chat to you about it.
So the little segue, I guess, to share with everyone. I hear you're also using all of this stuff to be an Uber driver.
Yeah, I was sort of when I first got home, I was thinking of stuff I could do. I was like, well, if I could drive, I could probably Uber drive, ride share. I don't need to get in and out of the car to do that. So yeah, I've been doing Uber driving since March. So what's that now?
And being first of all, do you know if there's that many disabled Uber drivers out there? Like, is there a community? Is there anything out there, or you're just kind of on your own sorting it out?
Not in Adelaide. I don't know if there's a community. I have heard someone on one of my other passengers, because they get in their car, they can see a lot of the modifications when they get in, so they get to chatting and all that. Someone else had a Uber driver in Queensland who was missing an arm. He was also using some spin-on stuff. But that's the only other one I've heard of so far. I'm sure there's plenty of this out there.
So does it give you? Oh, that's what I was next going to say. Is it a good party trick for the Uber passengers?
Yeah, it's not bad. I show the arm off to people who seem interested enough. Engineers are very happy to look at that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Especially if I think also OTs, because OTs kind of have an engineering mind anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're listening and you're technical, just look at the video. They're so cool.
Yeah. So,
yeah. The reason why I got you on is because of somebody got you as their Uber driver, and they just went off about it. They were so excited seeing you. Like, they don't have a disability, they don't have an OT background, they don't have an engineering background. He actually works for a road safety, work zone area, and he was saying it was the best Uber trip he's ever had, just because there was something to talk about. You were very generous with the way that you spoke about it.
Yeah, and I mean, you sort of have to be. I mean, if you're trying to hide the fact that it's there, it's not going to work. So, if you're ever worried about talking about it, it's probably not the ideal job for you, because people they just ask. And
yeah. If anything, I would challenge it's a good thing.
And it definitely is. So, it's. But if you ever do get uncomfortable talking about, and I do some of the Friday night, Saturday night driving as well. You get the drunk people; they're much more open with their questioning about disability, whether it's their choice or not. They do ask some more questions.
What's the best question you've had? Come on, what's the best question? What's the best conversation?
I mean, of course, they always ask, "Can you still get it up as one?" All that sort of stuff. You get that, and all the good fun. You talk it out, whatever.
Yeah. Good stuff. Really and it's breaking down barriers as well. The more that people can see, the better off it's going to be. And that's the whole reason why this podcast. So
one thing I also think it's really encouraging, and I guess it's something that I really want to encourage disabled drivers to look into as a form of income, is Uber driving, because it's actually a pretty good job for a disabled driver. Like, it's a very easily accessible job. You're not going to have as much judgment, whilst you're going for the job. It's a much easier job process to get. Because I have heard of other people doing it, and over here, and I think, you'd have less barriers as a disabled person getting that job, and it's a great job for someone who's a driver.
Talk that through, Alex. What's required? So if people want to think about, oh geez, I've got this modified car, I'm sitting at home doing nothing, maybe I could earn some money for myself, how would they become an Uber driver?
So you just need to get a Class C license, pretty much just a taxi license, whatever. So once you've gotten that, that's pretty much it. Uber's very happy for you to drive for it, as long as you can get this license. You do need to go get a medical, and if you are disabled, chances are it's not just your GP. You need to go see your specialist and get them to fill out your form. So I went and saw the rehab coordinators at Hampstead, so they were my experts that I put down, and they tick all the boxes and are happy with it. It's good to go.
And getting that Class C, is there any tricks involved in that?
No, not really. As long as you can find what's wrong with you, and as long as the person who's filling out the medical professional filling out that form is happy with you being able to drive in that capacity, you won't have a problem.
Yeah.
It's all just ticking boxes, government stuff. So
yeah,
and
I think it's just great as an option.
Yeah, and there's lots of other options other than Uber out there now as well. Yeah, with Ola and those type of things. There's a whole bunch of rideshare companies out there now. So why not?
Do you do it basically as your primary, like, full-time employment?
When I started, no, but currently, yes, it is now my primary income.
And how many days a week are you doing it?
I treat it like a normal job. I'll go out at 7 o'clock. You try and hit peak hour times, but obviously when it's busiest sort of thing. So I'll try and leave the house about 7. Come back home at around 11 o'clock once it's also died down, and then go back out at 2, come back at 6. But you know, for an hour, you can go out whenever you want. You don't want to drive during peak hour traffic, go out in between those times, or just do the weekend stuff where it's sort of quieter, but it is busier anyway. So
yeah.
That's really cool.
It's awesome. And Alex, we thank you very much for sharing your story and maybe encouraging others to think about how they can use their modified driving license and controls and so forth to potentially get out and use their car and their license for income. That's great. And we really thank you for sharing it. Can't let you get away without our final question though. So our final question is, what's something that you've used your car for other than just getting from A to B? Now it might be Uber driving, but is there something more interesting? Is there a unique Uber story? Is there a unique something that's happened while using your car that you'd like to share with us? Because we know that it is more than just getting from here to there.
No, I think the Uber driving would be probably one of the greater things I've done with it. I haven't really had many. There's not been one sort of standout experience with Uber. It is, I used to be a tradie, so I like just getting in cars and just chatting with people. So I was used to that on-site banter and just talking to people. So it's good that I've got that back. So I really enjoy that.
Have you had any Friday night, vomiters on you?
I've had one.
Yeah.
I've had one. There was a window next to her. I'm still very upset with her. She got a very bad review from me.
Oh dear.
But I was kind to her. I said, look, I can either charge you the cleaning fee, or if you do a decent job cleaning it, I won't charge you, because obviously I couldn't clean it, couldn't clean it easily.
No. So what did she choose?
She cleaned it.
She cleaned it.
Lucky it was only it seemed just to be cruiser water at that point. If it was a big chunky thing, I would have said no. But no, she did an okay job cleaning it, so it was fine.
Okay,
That's a wonderful story to finish on.
Yeah, we've been building up Uber driving, and now all of a sudden people might be questioning what's going on.
Floor mats are the key. Get some good floor mats.
Big rubber ones that are easy to hose down. Righto. All right, Alex, thank you so much. Listeners, hang around, because Ellie and I are going to break down our top 3 takeaways from this story. But Alex, thank you very, very much for coming on. Absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I wish we could pick who our Uber drivers were, because I'd love to be able to order you to take me to the airport all the time. It'd be great to catch up with you out and about on the road. But no, thanks very much for sharing your story.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
All right,
Thanks
mate.
very much. See you next time.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are now going to break down our top 3 takeaways. First of all, we want to say a massive thank you to Alex. If you want to get in contact with Alex and ask him a few more questions, we'll put a link to him in the show notes. So make sure you go and check us out at our Facebook page, the Drive Able Podcast. Just search Drive Able Podcast and it'll take you to our page where you can find all the info that you need to. And we might even put up a photo or 2 of Alex in his car there. Ali, let's talk about the top 3 takeaways. What's your number 1 takeaway from the interview today?
So the number 1 was, well, not in any order, but including the car mods in your plan. As I said, this seems to be something which does come up a fair bit. Car mods, I guess, being in the industry and being involved as a converter or even an engineer in that, it is a bit of a point of frustration for me often, because I'll be dealing with someone and we're helping them out and they're sort of going, yeah, this all looks good. And then they basically hit roadblocks because they haven't even thought about it. And then they kind of have made the assumption that's just part of their plan and driving is part of normal life. But it seems to be that kind of forgotten afterthought. And it makes me frustrated because it makes me think like I'm a forgotten afterthought, you know? So yeah.
It sounds like Alex was fortunate with his timing, but it happens so much for us. So the OT assessment side of it all, that's there and part of the capacity building part of your NDIS plan. So then as an OT, we put in an application for modifications, and that may not get reviewed until their next planning review meeting. Now so you might have your first planning review meeting, you might be super excited about driving, you book in your assessment with your OT right at the start of your plan. You may then need to wait 11 months until it gets reviewed, unless you put in a special review application. So, you know, there's delays in regards to that. It sounds to me as if Alex actually had his OT assessment near the end of his plan, and he didn't have to do too much waiting to be able to get the modifications actually in his car, whether it was COVID or whatever else that got in the way as well. But it's a big thing. It's a really, really big thing. You can be delayed by funding review meetings if those mods aren't included in your original plan, and it's very hard to get them included in your original plan because quite often you need to have that OT assessment to be able to know what you need. So it's a difficult thing to do. Sometimes having a chat, Ali, to a modifier and getting a rough quote of what you might need from a modifier's point of view, even if you're not trialing too much, but just, you know, I think this is what I need, and get those as a proviso in your plan. So they might approved in principle type of scenario, and then you need the OT report to actually get those released. That works for some clients. It doesn't work for everybody, but it certainly works for some people. And it's a good little trick to be able to help you through this process to get things moving a little bit quicker.
What Alex said was something I thought was really, really what he said really hit home for me. And that's, I guess, what I want to highlight for people. He said, in the first couple of months, all you're thinking about is survival. And so everything that's going into your plan and everything is survival. And then he goes, but then after a few months, once you've survived, then you're going, well, wait a minute, how am I going to live? And so it's very, I guess, particularly for people that have been through accidents and things like that, it's very natural to be in that survival kind of, you know, fight or flight mode during those early days.
Yep.
But I guess this is what we want to flag, that, hey, the driving thing is going to come up a few months later when they're sitting home alone and they've survived and going, what am I doing here?
Partners go off to work and they're isolated. It becomes a big goal.
We need to think beyond that and try and calibrate our minds in those times to go, well, let's need to think driving, you know, how is everyone living and so on. So
yeah. So big point number one, think about mods early. Think about what your needs might be early, and see if you can get it written into your early plans. Unfortunately, most people that would listen to this maybe when they're isolated at home, and it might be too late. But for the OTs listening to this, or the people helping with making plans early on, maybe when they're in hospital, it's not all about just getting them out of the hospital and getting them home. It's about what they can actually do when they're at home as well, and that may include driving. Yeah. All right. So kind of leads us into takeaway number 2, which is license before mods, which he hit upon, that NDIS wouldn't release the modifications funding until he could actually prove that he's passed his license test. So that's another thing that is a little bit, from my point of view, working with the NDIS with applications and so forth, and waiting for approvals for funds to come through. That one's a little bit hit and miss. And like I said in the actual podcast with Alex, it sometimes can come down to the actual delegate that is actually approving modifications or not. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be as dry cut that you have to have your license first. But Ali, you were saying that maybe it's a little bit different in New South Wales?
Well, generally speaking, so I guess what I wanted to differentiate was the funding versus the road rule license regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we've mentioned that here. So what we're talking about with respect to this story with Alex is that NDIS just won't, like, you can go and say, hey, I'm getting this car modified and I need the funding for it. They'll just say no until you've got a license, or they may not, you know. But the people that will say no is your local road authority. They won't let you drive a modified car, or well, basically their advice is don't even get your car modified until you get that license. But they won't let you drive or assess or anything in a, I know it's definitely the fact in New South Wales and in most states as well, that you need to get that license first before you kind of get that modification. And then when you call them, that's kind of how they advise you as well. Get those assessments, get the license, then you get the mod.
For you and me without a disability, it's like saying, don't go buy a car and have it sitting in your garage waiting. Go get your license first and then go get your car after that. So you can go out and purchase it. You can go and get it modified beforehand. You just can't drive it until that license comes through. But yeah, they don't. The Department of Transport are trying to be risk adverse, I guess, when they say that, RMS or whoever it might be.
The other thing also, which I guess the last thing around that is things you do, like, I guess it's kind of also against our philosophy of you need to be trying everything out and get the right thing for you. So if you go get modifications without having a really good amount of driving experience, I'm going to challenge that you may not have the right modifications, because as even Alex said, it took him 3 or 4 tries and lessons and driving, you know, to actually get the right one, you know. So you might get one in and go, yeah, this will work. I'll just get it modified. Let's go for the funding. But it may not be the best one, you know. So that's also part of it.
It happens every time. As listeners might know, I'm a driving instructor as well. So I actually get in the car and teach people how to use controls. The amount of times that we go, yes, in the first assessment, this is perfect. And then we drive with it for half an hour and we get an ache, or we get a pain, or we get a disturbance, or it's not quite what we thought it was going to be. I've been doing this for years. We try and pick the best controller right from the start based on experience, but there can be little things that pop up which don't come up in your original assessments. Whether it's when you go for a drive through the hills and you're twisting and turning, which you don't do through your original assessment, or whether it's doing reverse parallel parking and all of a sudden you have to do reversing into a tight area. All of those things can change how you use the control, and it could aggravate something that doesn't come up in your original OT driver assessment. So keep that in mind. It is a good thing to fully test and go through the process and stay in contact with the driving instructors and the drivers for the OTs to make sure that it is still the right fit once they've got, right up until when they get their license as well. Yeah. And that takes us to takeaway number 3, which is that Uber driving. It's how cool is that he can actually utilize those modifications. He said in the interview, I've got this car, I might as well use it. What's something that I can do with the car? And he's become an Uber driver, and it's
I think it's a great. I really encourage disabled people that can drive, that are looking for employment, to look into this as an avenue. It's, first of all, as you could see from Alex's vibe, you get a lot of self-confidence. You know, people are giving you compliments all the time. You're having fun experiences. You know, you're experiencing much more of community than you would from your home. Yep. Once again, it's not something, the thing that I love about it is you are in the driver's seat as such.
Literally, yep.
when it comes to the employment process. You know, he was in charge of the application forms. He went online. He just did it all himself. You know, you don't have to deal with all these social barriers and psychological barriers that will come from going for everyday jobs. You know, like, yes, of course, there are lots of companies that try to be inclusive and try and have all these inclusive campaigns and all that kind of stuff. But let's face it, a lot of them are pretty patronizing and can be really difficult to go through. But it's awesome. You know, like, you just go online, you fill out a form and you go get your car assessed. No one's even talking to you about disabilities and things like that. You know, you don't have to address it. You just another driver. And that's what I really love about it. And I love the fact that it's employment, you know, and that's what people can get.
Yeah. And the other thing is that it's breaking down barriers. The more people can see that you can be an Uber driver or whatever it is, the more it's going to become socially acceptable. That and that's another reason why we're doing this podcast, isn't it? Just to spread the word of driving with disabilities, to break down those barriers and spread the word that there's so much opportunity out there if you get the right mods and the right assessment process to get you there.
Yeah, exactly.
What we'll do for listeners is we'll try and find the links to the Uber drivers app. We spoke to Alex off air before as we were saying goodbye, and he said the best thing you can do is download the Uber driver app, which is different to the Uber app for being a passenger. Just go to that. And he said he just followed the dot points, the 1, 2, 3, 4, and followed them one by one of what you actually had to do to become an Uber driver. And he said it was really easy to follow. And so, yeah, I encourage people, if you want to go and explore this and you've got your modified car sitting at home and you're sitting at home and you want to get out and about a bit more, you know, the person that's going around in my head is John Davey that we interviewed, and he's, you know, him picking you up in his Mercedes and
oh man, you'd have a great time.
He would have a great time. That's the one I'm thinking of when I'm thinking about who else could do this. He would love it. All right, so that's it, everybody. That winds up this episode. Thanks very much for tuning in and joining us on this one. It was a great story with Alex, and we hope that you got something out of it.
Yeah, and as we say in every episode, if you have any queries about what you can do and what will work for you, get in contact with your local OT or mobility dealer and set yourself up with a trial. Trials really do put you in the driver's seat.
Or the Uber driver seat. The Uber driver seat. Yeah. Thanks very much, everyone. See you later. Thanks for listening to the Drive Able podcast with Brad Williams and Ali Akbarian. If you like what you've heard, make sure you like, rate, and subscribe. It really does make a massive difference. If you or anyone you know would like to share a story about driving with a disability, or you would like to get in contact, find the show notes, or find the resources mentioned in this episode, you can find us on Facebook. Just search @Drive Able Podcast for more information.